Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the great pleasure of Mike Maynard. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Julian. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to see you and good to have a conversation with you today. And I'm just going to tell the audience a little bit about you. You are the MD of Napier Partnership, which is a PR-led full-service marketing agency that specialises in the B2B technology sector. And you say you're a self-confessed geek who loves talking about technology. And you began your career as an electronics design engineer, working for companies ranging from GEC, Marconi, and DDA, developing products from complex radar systems to Kim Wilde's mixing desk, which is really interesting. And whether we get onto that, I'm not too sure, but it's certainly an interesting thing to talk about. As I ask everybody on the show, because I'm really nosy and curious about why people do what they do. So what do you love about what you do?
So I wish I could say it's just so easy, but actually, I think what I love is the challenge. Every day is different. Every client is different. And the rate of change, I mean, you mentioned the fact that I'm a bit of a geek. I love technology. I love the way technology influences things. And probably, marketing, and I think particularly B2B marketing has been more influenced by technology than almost any other industry.
And have you always been a geek, sort of technology-wise, and have you always been interested in sort of the aspects of marketing? Is that, I mean, where's this all come from?
So the geek bit, yes, yeah. I mean, when I went to school, I did the physics and maths. I did an engineering degree, so absolutely always been a geek. Where the marketing thing came from, that's a little bit of a longer story.
Because it does feel a bit of a jump, doesn't it, going from an engineer to marketing? I mean, that's like almost like a quantum leap there.
It's not that uncommon, but I can't really claim it was desperately planned. Right. So I started off as an engineer. I was designing electronic systems. I didn't really enjoy a lot of the kind of bureaucracy and admin behind taking a product from design to manufacture. So, clearly you needed to make sure that everything was right, all the parts were listed, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't really my thing. So I looked around at what I could do. And I realized that the technical support engineers who were coming to me had a company car. And at the time, 30 years ago, that was a big deal. A very tax efficient way of having a car. So I thought, I quite fancy a car. I could help people. So I moved into a technical support role. I got myself a car. It was a lovely Astra GSI, fantastic car, loved it. And started doing technical support, worked on that for a while. Moved to an American semiconductor company, and then eventually realized that really the route forward in my role was to go to the States, and I didn't want to do that. So kind of looked around for the next logical career step and decided marketing was the thing. Had an opportunity to move to become the European marketing manager for this company. And, had some great years there. So I spent 10 years with this semiconductor company, moving really from that engineering to marketing role.
Okay, that's interesting. That was interesting. And obviously you like that, you enjoy it now, and you've done that ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. There's a lot of similarity between marketing and, thank goodness I'm doing marketing now rather than 30 years ago, because, 30 years ago, start of the 90s, it was almost still the Mad Men kind of era. It was all opinion. It was theory. There was very little data. Today, the world is completely different. All of marketing revolves around data and understanding whether things work. And to be honest, that's kind of an engineering problem.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah. And it's interesting because I've known a lot of marketeers who've come from a science background, actually. And so it's very similar sort of logical way of problem solving, trying to work and navigate things through. So today, we've had a conversation already about this before, about, I know you've got a real passion for really bringing on young sort of people within the workforce. And, we know that millennials now are becoming, I don't know, there's some stats that within 10 years, they're going to become the significant part of the workforce, or almost will be there now. And then we have the old Gen Zs coming up behind them now. And like ourselves, the Gen X lot will be sort of becoming a little bit less in the workforce. So it is changing this dynamic. And I just want to understand, what is it about the sort of younger sort of people that you're quite interested in and got a passion for? Because you do have a passion for it.
That's a great question. I think that, there's a few things. One is, surround yourself with younger people. You don't feel quite as old most of the time until you talk about music, and then you feel really old. But, a lot of that is around helping me be a better marketer by getting a wider range of views. But I think particularly one of the most exciting things is how fast, people can develop at the start of their careers. And I think this is always an interesting challenge. I remember when I started my career, you leave university, you think you know everything, you walk into your first engineering job, and the first thing you get told is, right, you've got to understand a degree gets you in the position where you can start learning the first important thing. You don't know anything that's relevant, and very quickly you realize that, but you pick up things really fast. And I think that's always quite exciting. So we've seen, younger people join the company and really learn and develop very quickly. And so I've really enjoyed that. I found that really useful. I think clients love to see, people at their agency develop quickly, and they also bring some new ideas as well. And, some of them great, some of them maybe not so great, but it's great to see different perspective, people from outside coming in and having a different approach.
And is this a nature of your business that is obviously B2B technology and, I don't know, wanting that innovation, or did you make a deliberate sort of play for bringing in younger talents, or a combination of both, I guess?
I'd love to claim it as a strategy. I mean, ultimately, one of
retrospectively it is now, is it?
Yeah. We clearly, looked and analysed the situation and worked out young people are the right people to bring in to optimise our business. Although a cynic might say that being based in Chichester, there's actually very few senior experienced marketing professionals in the area. And that's honestly the truth. We very rapidly realized that in order to support our growth, whilst we could get some senior people, we couldn't get enough to grow as quickly as we wanted to. So we recognized we had to bring in younger people and had to train them up. It was the only option.
Okay. And how have you gone out about doing that in terms of bringing people on board, making sure that they'll fit with your culture and fit with where you're going as a business?
So that's a great question. We've had I guess, two real different routes. I mean, one is bringing on people as apprentices, and we've had a couple of real significant success stories with people coming in as apprentices who've not done degrees, who've not got these marketing qualifications. And we've worked with Chichester College, who've been fantastic in terms of helping us develop those people. And, that's been a really successful way to bring in, frankly, very young, very green people into the business and make them successful. The other, probably more conventional way is through sort of a more of a graduate approach, where we're hiring in graduates and developing them. And typically there, we might be offering them a CIM, so Chartered Institute of Marketing qualification, because that's somewhat more practical than they would have got in the degree. The degrees are still, I mean, too academic to, really let people hit the ground running. I mean, when you do a degree, and I've lectured on some PR courses, you're asking the students to think about strategy. You're asking them to think, at a very high level. And actually, if you leave university as a graduate and move to Coca-Cola, they don't ask you to decide the strategy for marketing for Coca-Cola on your first day. You're actually doing a lot of the execution. So it is about, changing that graduate mindset into execution and delivering tactics. And rather than having this big overarching strategy, trying to think about very specific campaigns or activities and how to make them work.
And have you sort of focused, is it mainly on graduates, or do you take anybody from a non-degree background? I mean, what's your focus on that? Because obviously there's a lot of talk about you don't need a degree or you do need a degree, and there's a lot of negativity towards degrees. I just want to get your sort of thoughts on that, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. You don't need a degree. You don't need a degree to join Napier. We've had people very, very successfully join Napier. I mean, I've got, one of our account managers now, Emily, joined, 5 or 6 years ago, literally straight out of school, no experience, as an apprentice. And she's actually got to the point where she's running, some of our major accounts. And frankly, if I had, some challenges around, for example, digital marketing, I mean, she's the person I want on my account. She's brilliant. She's got some great insight into account-based marketing. She's done tremendously well. But equally, if you look at people who've got degrees, they've had 3 years of training. And as I say, it's not always what I call directly on the job training, but they actually come with, something slightly different, maybe a more strategic outlook. Certainly, they're more experienced, more mature. I think both are great ways to recruit people. I don't know you could say one is better than another. They're just different.
So what is it you're looking for when you're trying to recruit somebody in that sort of the younger people sort of brackets? What is it about them that makes you think actually they've got something, they've got this potential, got this spark? Is there some certain aspects that you sort of see?
It's unbelievable. I don't know if any young people are listening to the podcast, but it's incredible when people come and talk to us, particularly when they come for interview. Within 2 or 3 minutes, if they're keen or not, if they're enthusiastic. And what we're looking for are, people who actually want to do the job. And that sounds crazy, but literally that's what we want to do. We want to find people who are keen, enthusiastic, because they're the people who put the work in, and they're the people who develop really, really quickly. And to me, it's really interesting because you'll have some people, particularly the younger people coming in, who maybe it's their first job interview. I don't know. It could have been Emily's first job interview, and they're nervous, and they're not performing at their peak. But at the same time, you can still see that spark of enthusiasm. And to me, that's the most important thing: is somebody who wants the job and wants to make it a success. And I think as a business, we can give them what they need, the tools and the training to make it a success if they're prepared to put the work in.
And what, bringing in younger people, because I know you obviously don't just have younger people, you have a wide range of demographics in your organizations. Is there any challenges to other people in the organization when you're bringing in lots of younger talent, so to speak? I mean, or even pitfalls from sort of bringing young talent?
Well, I hope there's challenges. I mean, we'd love the younger people to challenge the older people, and we love vice versa, older people to challenge the younger people. So from that point of view, I guess there's always an underlying element of competition in any business, but we're not an outwardly competitive business. And one of the great things about running a smaller business is you don't have this huge kind of corporate structure to deal with. And if I have someone who's brilliant, I can make them a job, and I can create a job. I can create a job title. I can, I can even build a business around somebody who's got a particular enthusiasm for a certain area of marketing. So I can absolutely, make someone who's keen, enthusiastic, successful. So it's not a zero-sum game. I love the younger people to bring new ideas, to, frankly, push some of the older people on the importance of digital. And I'd equally love the older people will look at it and push the younger people maybe on quality. And it's a very interesting balance. Younger people are perhaps more used to seeing marketing on Facebook, which is often a little raw. Whereas, if you've been in business for 30 years and been seeing that, you've seen like these pieces of content that have gone through 20, 30 revisions that have been perfected to the point of, almost utter boredom. But you get to see these kinds of, really polished bits of content, and that's what you expect. So, everyone can bring their own perspective, and their own perspective's always valuable.
And I guess bringing that diversity really does sort of create that sense of a thriving mindset and stimulation amongst the rest of the business, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd rather hire someone because they're good, not hire someone because they're, 45 or they've got 10 years experience or anything like that. I'd rather hire someone who's good. And, the other thing, being a small business, it's much easier to have a much stronger culture. And I think we've really focused on a culture of people enjoying working together, and I really hope people enjoy working with each other, because we pick people that we as a management team want to work with. That's what we do at the end of the day.
No, and I think I've talked to a lot of businesses where they're starting to think a bit more about hiring for attitude as opposed to skill, because you can always teach the skills, the abilities, as long as you've got the attitude to learn and develop and grow. That's really important. So in the last 12 months, how have you found your business, but how you found developing people in that time, or bringing new people on? I mean, that's been quite a challenge, I guess, or has it not? It might not be in your business.
For us, it's been a massive challenge. And we're still trying to work through why. But not having that face-to-face element makes training, particularly where people are new to the industry or, maybe even new to work, it's really, really hard to do. So we are planning a move back to the office, probably as a hybrid kind of move. But we know, one of the biggest drivers for us, we know, is training and improving the training. We are doing other things as well to try and make our training a little more formalized. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why some people have been very successful, some people haven't. We've had a very personal, almost individual training program with everybody. And I think some companies that have had very standardized training programs have actually found it easier to train people when they're remote. Right. And I think the challenge is getting, the benefits of that individual personalized training. People can focus on what they want to do and learn what they need rather than having to learn everything and then work out what's important. So you want to keep that, but you also want to introduce maybe a little bit more formality. So that's what we're doing. We've spent a lot of this year where we've done training. It's all been video recorded. We're building this library. So we're getting to the point where we've got that kind of training built in now.
Okay. I've been talking to a lot of businesses where they've, like yourself, done a lot of stuff online, or they've onboarding people has been obviously quite a challenge. And I remember I was talking to one sort of a CEO where I think some of his direct reports were when they onboarded somebody on in terms of their teams, they would literally put an open room on a Zoom so they could just access them, almost like a water cooler. They didn't need to ring them. It was just on all the time. And then people would just pop in and go, hello, can I was wondering, have you done anything like that? Any ways of trying to create those water cooler moments, so to speak, and try to create that almost normality of dialogue without being so forced with a formal meeting?
Yes, we do a couple of things. I mean, with new people particularly, we do a lot of like scheduled one-to-ones. So they meet people they won't necessarily even directly work with, just so they can get to know the company, get to know the people. And then we've tried really hard to get some informal kind of elements to the business. So we've done the pub quiz. We're still doing the pub quiz, not every week, but we're still doing the pub quiz, which I think is, we must be one of the last businesses still
I can't remember. I don't know anybody else who's still doing pub quiz anymore.
I think this Friday we've got a pub quiz on penguins, which is terrifying me. I feel I don't know enough about penguins, but that's how far we've got down the pub quiz route. So we're doing that, but we also do a couple of 15-minute morning calls that are, a little bit of some good news from the business. Yeah. So this morning we had someone who'd just pulled in an extra £10,000 of business we didn't expect. So a bit of positivity, and we play a game we call Throw and Catch, which is we basically have a topic and we talk about that. And last week was jokes. This Thursday, I think we need to talk about what are the 3 apps you really couldn't live without on your iPhone. I mean, just anything off the wall, crazy kind of discussions, and it always is quite entertaining. You get to know people, so I think we've tried to have some of that, fun element there, but it isn't as fun doing it remotely. I mean, that's for sure.
Oh, no, not at all. I agree with you. And just on that, and what are your thoughts on the sort of future of work? I mean, it's a big topic in itself, just from your own perspective, but also generally, how do you think people are going to navigate this next phase of post-pandemic?
And I think most people are going to navigate by guessing, and hopefully we'll end up somewhere that's good. I don't think anyone knows, and I think there'll be an initial where we don't want to go back to the office full time, kind of, people being a bit reluctant to go back, and whether that's from safety, health concerns, or whether it's from, the benefits of working from home. And then suddenly there'll be like a bit of a rush back when people go, yeah, actually, I do want to go and meet the people I work with and my friends. And, and then there'll be a bit of a pullback. And I think it'll be like these waves of people coming in and out of the office, and we'll settle I think it's unlikely that we'll see businesses go, everybody working remotely if they're office based, or everyone working full time in the office. It's this magic hybrid word, which is kind of like a classic British fudge. We don't know what the answer is. It's going to be somewhere in between the two complete extremes, which I think is a fairly safe bet.
Yeah, and have you got any sort of principles of how you're going to think that through and put it together? Because it is, I've talked to many organizations, and there's like 5,000 ways of doing this, and it's really difficult. But have you got any sort of thinking, I don't know, core ways you're going to go, no, we're going to approach it in this way and base it on this to try and ensure we bring everybody with us and keep the communication going?
So I think in terms of principles, there are certain things that we know are more effective in the office. So if you ask people individually, are you more effective and efficient working from home? They'll go, yes. If you ask them, what about the rest of your team? They'll go, no. And the reality is that individuals become more efficient at home, but teams become less efficient when they're fragmented. And it's obvious. I mean, it's going to happen. And trying. So our first thing is to explain that. That's the problem. Is we're not trying to bring people back into the office because we think they're not efficient at home or we don't trust them. It's that the team doesn't work as well if you're not together. So we need to find what that means, and I have no clue what that means at the moment. But I just know that what we need to do is do things to encourage people to spend time in the office, because that matters, and ultimately it increases their contribution to the business. Whilst individually they may have a bigger individual contribution, the team as a whole is less effective. And what matters really in the business is how well the team performs, not whether you've got one standout individual.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think having that almost principle at the core about team is really important. I've been talking to a lot of organizations about, making sure you keep those connections going and those collaborations, and collaboration is part of the team, and you do that more effectively. It can be done remotely because we've proved it, but more effectively in person. But through it all, making sure that communication is all the way through, because there will be moments where, however organizations do it, where someone be in the office and someone be at the home, is how you keep them connected in the same meeting at that same time, and that people don't miss out on things that are going on, and almost being inclusive with that, really. Just going back to bringing on young people and creating that sort of culture of focusing on that, because that's obviously where the field workforce is going. What other sort of pitfalls might there be bringing on somebody either straight from university or from an apprenticeship sort of point of view?
I think the biggest challenge is not assuming that they know things. And I think that most of the problems we've had is we've assumed something and the individual's never said, look, I just have no clue. And I think particularly with younger people, they find it quite hard to admit they don't know stuff. And we keep saying it's fine. If you don't know it, just ask. We'll fix it. It's fine. And they go, oh, I can't admit to the boss I don't know that. And it's very frustrating from our point of view, but it's also very understandable. So, to me, the biggest issue you've got is really making sure that you don't make assumptions, or if you do, you validate those assumptions with the individual and make it really clear, and ask questions in a way that are not, a direct, well, can you do this or not? Because there are definitely people, and particularly younger people, not exclusively younger people, but particularly younger people, are reluctant to admit, something they can't do because they see it as a weakness. And as advice to younger people, it's not a weakness. Just be direct, and you'll get taught it, you'll learn it, and it'll all be over very, very quickly. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest challenge we have.
Yeah, it's an interesting point actually, because my youngest daughter, I think she works in a cafe, and some things she was finding difficult, and I just say to the owner, you don't know how to do it. I can't do that.
Yeah.
They'll get rid of me. I know. No, they won't. It's okay to say, I don't know how, even though they've been shown it, I don't know how this works. And it's that sort of vulnerability, I guess, at that age where you feel like if you need to know it all, because otherwise you'll lose your job, which is obviously a concern. So what do you do besides that to ensure that that you'll get success when you bring somebody in from that perspective, in terms of helping them to be successful through your organization?
I mean, that's a great question. We've got an amazing HR manager, Debbie, who spends a lot of time talking to people and making sure that they're happy. I mean, she's the person we always send, if we feel that there's a problem with someone not understanding something, she's I guess the non-managerial person they can trust. She's not nasty like us. So, it's really about talking to people. It's about communication. And I think there's, there has been a challenge, and without doubt, whilst people look at, remote working, they say, well, Zoom is great. It can replace meetings. Yeah, it can kind of replace meetings. It can't replace the hi, how you doing chat when somebody's making coffee. And I think, it's those informal chats that we're trying to develop to find the problems. I mean, to be honest, I think most businesses don't have an issue with solving problems. If they have people who don't understand something, or haven't been taught something, or just never experienced it, it's easy to train people, but it's really hard to find the problem in the first place. That's the real challenge. So that's definitely an area I would love to do a better job on. I mean, I think it's something we're trying, and we'll get there, but it's really tough. And particularly with the dynamics of not everyone wanting to be completely honest about, what they see as weaknesses, and we might just see as our training failure.
Yeah, that's right.
And it normally is. I mean, it's normally, a lot of these problems are down to issues with the training. And we can look at it and go, yeah, I can understand that now. When I said, "Do you understand it?" I saw you really didn't, but you said, yes, I trusted you. And, I was stupid. It's my fault, and it often is, the senior people's fault for not picking up the issues.
And do they get assigned like mentors? Because I know a lot of organizations work on that sort of mentor buddy system to help them. Is somebody who's not their direct reports or their manager, somebody they can talk to and offload with, and almost ask these stupid questions that perhaps they feel a bit embarrassed to ask their boss.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a buddy system. We actually have a buddy system for everybody, no matter how senior they are when they come in. I got told recently we shouldn't call them buddies because senior people get offended, and I kind of thought, well, they're senior people; they can grow out of that. So we call them buddies, and it definitely helps in some areas. I think it doesn't cover everything. And one of the things is because you're not necessarily matching to somebody who's doing exactly the same job. I mean, everybody's doing something slightly different in the agency because the clients are different or the campaigns are different. It doesn't always solve the problem. It definitely helps. I mean, without a doubt, it's been a good approach from our point of view. But it can be. It can still be a challenge. It's not the fix. You can't, as a management team, say, right, there you are. You've come in. You're new. Give you a buddy. Everything's solved. We don't have to worry about it. I think you've still got to work and make sure you deliver that training. And to me, that's the important thing. What we can do is we can expose people to far more than they'd ever see even in a university course. We can get them to learn far more things, and it's obviously highly practical as opposed to perhaps more academic. But the range of things we can get people to work on is huge compared to what you'd see elsewhere. So I think the training's really exciting, and maybe that's another challenge is the way marketing's going with this increase in technology. It's so easy to keep throwing out new things to people who are just starting.
No, that's interesting, actually. And just on reflection on the last year, what sort of one thing that you've either learnt or done as a business that you're going to continue to do going forward, whether you go hybrid or not? Just be interesting to know.
Wow. I feel like we've learnt so much over the last year in terms of just all sorts of things, from like being a bit clearer with planning and sharing content and documents, all the way through to learning that we don't have to maybe travel as much as we thought we did. I think one of the things we have learned is, and this is going to sound a bit strange because it's not directly related to the pandemic, But I think as an organization, we've realized that we're working with very, very large companies. So we're working with several companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies. And sometimes I think being a relatively small agency, you don't feel confidence pitching to somebody that big. You know, you're there, you're 30 people, they're 300,000 people. And maybe it's a little less intimidating because you're not going into the big corporate HQ and everything because you're doing everything through Zoom. We've realized that actually we're damn good at this stuff, and we're really good at helping these big companies. So I think that's the one thing I'd probably take overall, and it's not necessarily a direct learning from the pandemic, but it's a result of perhaps not, no longer being intimidated by these big corporate lobbies and, all the glitz and glamour that surrounds huge companies, because it's just a bit of glitz, and so, yeah, I think we will definitely be more, we'll be more forward about how we approach some of our bigger target companies and much more direct. And when we do, it seems to work really well.
Well, perhaps the pandemic has created a bit of a level playing field for you, which is great.
Yeah, I think it helps as well. I mean, obviously when clients, again, go to visit a huge agency that's got hundreds of people in London, they can afford to have a very nice lobby area, and, you can put the koi carp in there and have a waterfall or whatever else, kind of floats your boat. But I think that kind of has leveled things out a bit for sure, but it's made it much easier. And we've had, several really successful pitches with companies I think are very aspirational, companies I really want to work with, and we've won it, and we've actually found that we can do a great job. So the more we keep seeing that, the more we can keep pitching those very big companies. Brilliant.
That's really good to hear. Actually, small companies doing some good stuff. Excellent stuff. Well, it's been great and a delight to have you on today, Mike. So if people are interested about what you do, if young people are out there, young leaders are listening and want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, absolutely. Anyone is welcome to contact me on LinkedIn, or they can email me, mike@napierb2b.com. Or they can listen to our podcast. We've got a podcast that talks about marketing technology called Marketing B2B Technology. Very simple podcast name. And lastly, if there are young people who would like a job in marketing and like the sound of working in an agency and working on B2B, we currently have 2 vacancies open. So people can either email me, they can go through the Napier B2B website, or you can probably find them. I think we're advertising them on places like Indeed as well, so you can probably find them there. And we'd love some applications.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thank you for your time today. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Julian.